Hi,
Hi,
hi.
Tom.
It's nice to have an opportunity of talking to you without crowds of people watching and listening. It's
Yeah.
makes a very pleasant change.
Well, these one-on-one conversations, I always like talking to you, Tom. We always go places I'm not expecting.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good place to be. I'm enthralled with knowing, and I've always known a bit about you, but I don't know enough about you. And perhaps you don't know enough about me. Your good lady drafted an email and she got three things wrong in about the first paragraph, but I'm not going to go into that. I wouldn't hold that.
But she doesn't always ask me before she writes things.
No. How did you get into play? I mean,
It's an evolution, Tom. It started off. Okay, this is where it started.
yeah,
I had the good fortune when my daughter was born. When our daughter was born, I got to be the stay-at-home parent. And my wife had you mentioned my good lady. She's more than a lady. She is a powerful businesswoman, and she had her career going, and she really wanted to continue that. And I had the opportunity. And at the time, I was freelance writing, and I was doing okay at it, but it wasn't anything with no great shakes. And it was just sort of almost like a hobby job in a way. And so I just had the good fortune, the privilege of being able to stay home with my daughter when she was born and be the stay-at-home parent. And one day, I found myself underneath the dining room table with her. And I looked up to see the underside of the dining room table, and I just had this flood of memories come back from my childhood, because I had not seen the bottom of a piece of furniture, in 20 years.
Yeah.
And being under there, suddenly I realized that there's this whole world that I had left behind, that I'd forgotten, and my daughter had brought me there. And so that was really the moment where I realized, oh my God, this is where I don't want to ever come out from underneath the table.
Yeah, I had similar things when I was, because I'm a lot older than you, a lot older than you. And I can recall back to my childhood when in the 1950s and early 60s, when Lone Ranger and Tonto was the order of the day. And the end of my bedstand at the end had a blanket over it, and that was my horse. And my brother was always the goodie. I think I was forever Tonto. And don't ask me what I was in Tarzan, because I was always the ape rather than Tarzan. And we did things on. Given that I was a Londoner, so I spent most of my childhood in bomb sites. Literally in bomb sites, playing around with some of people's lives, but also in places which had all the challenges and all the risk, frankly, that you could ever want. And that was my start as well. A bit earlier than yours in terms of time, but also in terms of age, because I was pulled into play probably when I was 15 or 16. Before you were born. What year were you born?
1962.
Oh, Jesus, man. That's oh no, yeah, you were born. That's
I was
62.
already around. I'm not that young.
I thought you were younger than that.
Yeah. Well, it's the dewy glow. But
Yeah. So under the table with your daughter, who's now 20 odd.
She's 23. So it's, so she kind of got me into, the whole world of early childhood education, because then we joined a cooperative school, and which meant that I got to go to school with her. And that's kind of where I stayed. When she moved on to big school, I was just, I had the opportunity to work with some master teachers. I got, again, incredibly fortunate. Her classroom teacher, Chris David, was just a genius. She was just, on the surface, that sweet, gentle preschool teacher that we all have as a stereotype. But underneath, she had a very sharp pedagogy. And I'll just never forget one of the first days in the classroom and sitting there with the kids, and the children are playing with building blocks. And I just sat down with the kids and started building with the blocks as well. And she came over and put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Tom, this is the children's building, not yours." And again, that was one of those moments where I just had an epiphany, like, this is why I'm here. It's not here for me to take over. not for me to do it for them, but to be alongside them as they do these things and support them when they need it, but otherwise to stay out of their way and let them play. Kind of the way you got to do in the bomb sites and everything.
Yeah. But I think that's sort of almost where, you know, we live a few thousand miles apart, and we share a few years in age, and we are a bit different in our cultural outlooks, perhaps. I don't think we are, actually. I'm just saying that to fill the gaps while I'm thinking about what I'm trying to say. The thing that has fascinated me for all these years and really disrupts me quite a lot, that a lot of the young people who are joining the profession, some of them, unfortunately, are not seeing it as a profession. They're seeing it as an opportunity or a job, which it obviously is, but it isn't to people like us. The essence of play, you picked it up on the thing that we did quite recently for Play Ed. And if you haven't seen it, anybody that's listening or bothering to listen, Vimeo is the place to see it. Is freely chosen. A thing you said quite loudly, which echoes with me, is there's no such thing as free play. You know, play's not an activity. Play's an action. Play's something that instinctively you do. And the other one was intrinsically motivated and self-determined and freely chosen, which I still see. I was at a nursery today, and I won't mention which one, where there are staff who don't understand that.
Oh, I think that's true. And I think you were mentioning, I mean, because even as young as I am, Tom, we both of us grew up in an era that Peter Gray refers to as the golden age of childhood play, the author Peter Gray and researcher. And, he talks about, because this was sort of a period of time when we were kind of between the wars, and we were kind of in an era when we didn't need the children to go to work to earn money for the families for the most part. And so those of us who were children in that era, just, our mothers would send us outside and say, stop driving me crazy, and shut the door behind us. And we got to kind of raise ourselves and ask and answer our own questions as we were out there, because and I think that for a lot of people that have been born more recently, we've entered an era of fear about as parents and as educators, I think, in a way, and an era of fear where there's so many things to be concerned about. This idea that if I don't enrich my child constantly, then they will fall behind. Or, there are predators around every corner. And Lenore Skenazy from Free Range Children does a great job of kind of debunking those myths that we live in, or these ideas that somehow, if our children aren't constantly active in some kind of intellectual pursuit, we are not doing our jobs as parents in manufacturing kids. And I think, go ahead.
How much of that do you think is guilt rather than aspiration?
I think guilt probably plays a huge part of it. I mean, I think this is one of the sad parts. I look around, evolution. We were, hunter-gatherers for whatever 95% of our existence, right? And we grew. We lived in these communities where everybody was together, 20 to 100 individuals. Our brains have evolved to have our parents help raise us, but also the neighbors' parents, and also the older children in the neighborhood, also the grandparents, and have this and work and play was all intermixed. There was not a division. And we've taken our village and we've broken it up until we put adults go over here to this place and work all day. And then the kids go over to this place and we call it school. And then we've taken our senior citizens and put them in retirement homes and senior centers over here. And we've broken our village up into this bizarre, and people want to blame all kinds of things, but I think we start feeling guilty because I think intuitively we want to spend time in a community like that as adults and children, and certainly as older people too.
It's interesting that things seem to be changing back to some of the better, and COVID is obviously the topic of the year, if not of the decade. But some of the consequences of COVID have actually started us thinking a lot more positively about that. The ability to help other people is obviously there in most people's places. The air is a lot cleaner. The sky's blue. Out there it's blue. It's not a murky grey anymore. The sound of aeroplanes has been replaced by the sound of birds. and children are beginning to recognize bird calls, rather than, is that a 747 or is that a Boeing 39? It's going. There are some positive things that are beginning to emerge from it. And one of the things I think that certainly I'm pushing very hard for over here, and I'd be interested to know if it's the same in the States, is as our children go back, this self-distancing 2-year-olds is 2 meters apart. Oh, really funny bit. Let me digress. Segue number 37. We've got a thing about you must keep 2 meters apart. Brackets, that's 6 foot.
Uh-huh.
Undo the brackets. No, it's not. It's 6'6". When it goes down to a meter, we're going to actually be 3 inches less than that we've got to distance. But children can't do that. No. So what I've been saying is that until we've got some clarity about what this illness can do for children, is we stay outside.
Yeah.
Which encourages us to look at nature, which encourages us to look at fresh air, which encourages us to cook outside, and suddenly it becomes a sense of community again.
Yeah.
I'm interested because prior to COVID, we were doing a lot of work with elder care, where people were coming to us and we were going to them, groups of children, groups of adults, whether or not sooner or later they'll start joining us in the outside, and that's something I want to try and promote a little bit in the coming weeks. But it's yeah, go on.
Well, I think that's really fascinating that you said that, because I hadn't really quite thought of it that way. I mean, certainly having children outside, even without COVID, is obviously, the more we can do that. If our schools were all outdoor schools, and we know there's a whole forest school movement and bush school for Australians and for everywhere else, that where people are doing this, and it's growing and it's becoming, and being outdoors is medicine. Being outdoors is where we're supposed to be. But I was recently reading a book by an author named Rebecca Solnit, and it's called Paradise Built from Hell. And she wrote this book 10 years ago. And what she did was she took a look at, and she was an American author, so she took a look at 4 recent sort of disasters. The Great Fire in San Francisco back at the early part of the century, 9/11, Hurricane Katrina. And instead of looking at the tragedy, she looked at, okay, first, everybody who had the worst time of their lives, there was another person who this was a transformative experience, an incredible experience. And she talks about, after the big earthquake in San Francisco, something like 80% of the population was homeless. And that meant that they all had to live outside in the streets together in tents, in communities. And she said that there was something about living a community life outdoors that created almost, a temporary utopia. And she talked about all of these beautiful places that people, that people who lived during that era, when you read the literature about it, they talk about, that's what they're talking about. It's how that incredible community formed of everybody working together. And when you live your life out in the open in a village like that, there's a bonding, and there's acceptance, and there's a beautiful thing that can happen. And so getting us outside as a community, Tom, I think is a genius idea.
It's certainly something that really is, carrying on the thoughts. I mean, disasters seem to bring that ability for us to think more laterally. Unfortunately, it takes it took a war, if not several wars, for people to be thinking like that. But now this natural disaster is one that's giving us thought. And I don't know, I'm a great follower and an admirer of a lot of the women leaders that we've got in this world at the moment. Finland and Iceland and more particularly New Zealand, who now is beginning to say, as I was reading this morning, 4-day weeks. Suddenly we will start to have a real 4-day week, and the 4-day week will give us the opportunity of doing all those things with our families that we could never do before. And I think that's one of the things that's certainly happened here. I don't know if it's happened in the States, that we've been locked in for 10 or 12 weeks, and people have actually got to know each other again.
Yeah.
You know,
Tom, it is happening. I mean, because all these parents, I mean, part of it to me is because all these parents have suddenly, they had to stop working. They found themselves at home with their child all day long. And they began to, they got to focus on their kid and spend their time with their child. And they got to see their child playing and got to sort of understand some of the things that we understand. And those of us in the profession have been trying to sell them for a long time. And there's two different studies. There was a survey of workers in the Seattle area. This is where I live in Seattle. And right now, the big businesses are kind of panicking because something like 20% of their employees are considering continuing with homeschooling when this is done, not coming back to work. And there was a national survey done by NIAC, our biggest national sort of association of educators. And their survey said 40% of American families are considering now homeschooling going forward. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to do it, but they're considering it. And just the fact they're considering it is huge.
Yeah. And the thing that worries me is that this advantage that we've got, this opportunity we've got, gets wasted. You've had to queue up for food, and sometimes you've taken the option, and all the supermarket, all the cafes and restaurants have been shut. So even if you wanted crap, you couldn't buy it.
Right.
Suddenly McDonald's has re-emerged, and the first traffic jam I get into, I get to the front of the traffic jam, it's a queue for a McDonald's drive-in.
Oh.
The next day I see packages of McDonald's flying around the streets where people have just eaten it and thrown it away. That mentality, we want to try and stop it coming back. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to do it totally, but things like homeschooling, I think will certainly lead people in the right direction.
Well, that's what I'm hoping, Tom, is that, listen, the people the people who've had the most power and make the most money really want us to go back to the old normal, because that's the stability for them. That's where they've made their money. The wealthier you are, the less likely you want change, because it shakes the foundation of what makes you powerful and wealthy. But for the rest of us, we're looking around and we're going, and I know there are a lot of parents, and I think this is a big shift in my world, is parents who are saying, this isn't so bad. And what you guys do in your schools is really quite impressive. And I want to learn more about what you're doing, and I'm getting, every day I get emails or messages from parents and telling me about something miraculous, I'm going to only put it in quotes because you and I have seen it our whole careers. Yeah. Something miraculous their child has done or said. A mother just recently, she just showed me her daughter had arranged a set of science experiments in the backyard. A 5-year-old girl, she had just gotten into it, and she set up a whole series of science laboratories around her backyard. And then she had taken then her 2-year-old sister out to perform these experiments. And she said, this all happened completely off my radar. They just went out there in the fenced garden and did it. And she was so amazed, and I didn't say to her, and that's what we see every single day on the playground, is children setting up experiments.
I think one of the things, you're absolutely right about the people who want us to go out and sell schools again, and sell getting 9 till 5s and sell getting back to work. 30% of our population now works from home. Yeah. Whereas it was something like 12% before COVID. So, they can stay at home. There's no reason why. And they're probably more productive at home, frankly, but that's a different issue.
Well, it's a different issue. And I go back and forth on that one, because on the one hand, I'm right here, right outside my window here is Amazon.com. Their buildings have grown up all around here. I mean, they have 55, 60,000 employees who up until January would come here every day. And now they're not coming in, and they're going to be closed. I think right now they've said through the end of the year now. They've just decided on their own, no government. They just said, because they feel really good about it, and a lot of their employees love working from home and they like the flexibility. But what I have noticed is that in the last few weeks, I'm seeing more and more employees showing back up at the office. And I think it's for social life. They need to be connected. And what you and I are doing here is wonderful, because this is the only way you and I could do this on a day-to-day basis. But you need human beings to be with our children. We see it all the time. And I can't imagine really that all the offices are going to close. Now, maybe they'll become more satellite oriented and smaller offices,
Yeah.
but we need to be in the presence of other people.
I think one of the issues that stops many people from homeschooling is the belief that homeschooling means that you have to leave your child at home and teach them.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's about. I mean, a fact that not many English people know, I'm not sure if it's the same in the States. At what age do you have to start school in the States? You have to
everyone, so we have 50 states, each one has its own rules. In my state of Washington, we're one of you don't have to go to school till you're 8 years old.
Right.
Which is developmentally perfect. Nobody knows that. See, that's the piece about our state that everybody believes they have to send their children to school at 6 or 5 or 6. Yeah. But the truth is 8 years old is what the law says. And so people you don't have to provide any kind of education if you don't want to.
Do you know what age our children have to go to school?
I don't know. What is it?
Well, what everybody believes is it's 4, and increasingly now. Those they're a bit older will believe it's 5, and in fact, if there is any obligation or theoretical obligation, 5 1/4 is the theoretical obligation. The real obligation is never. There is no obligation to send your child to a school. You can all you need to say is, I'm sorry, I'm going to educate them from home. Mm-hmm. It's going to be home education, but they will have a full-time education. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Do you have to provide proof that you're educating the children?
Interestingly, at this point in time, no, which is fascinating. There is nobody monitoring it. There's nobody controlling it. Some local authorities give advice and assistance, but they've got no authority to do anything unless they can prove that you're not providing any kind of education at all. And that's a myth again that creates a nice one that enables you to go, you get yourself back to. And our Prime Minister was on the television today saying it's time to get back to school. We want all children to get back to school. Disadvantaged children in a traditional school, in my view, are probably more disadvantaged than if they stayed at home. And
that may well be true. I mean, I want to go back real quick to our conversation about these women leaders around the world. Yeah. Because I think, and this is probably will make some people mad, but I'm ready just to turn the world over to women, especially younger women, because I'm so impressed by these young women. Andrea Merkel in Germany did a great job with COVID. So you don't have to be young to do it right. But one of the things that inspired me so much was when Jacinda Ardern became Prime Minister of New Zealand. One of the first things she did was take maternity leave.
Yeah.
And that was inspiring to me because that was a real statement of values that I would love to see every nation take.
It's happening. It's happening slowly. The only disadvantage we've got, everybody blames the reason that we can't do it in the US or in the UK or in Europe or in all the big countries. So we've got too many people. You can do it in a country like New Zealand, it's got 6 million people. You can do it in a country like Iceland, it's got 350,000 people. You can do it in Finland, it's got 11 million people. But you can't do it in our case in 65. In your case, 1.5 billion people.
Well, we only have 350 million. We don't have billions in our country.
Yet.
But we're still the third largest. I think we're the third largest country in the world. I think China and India are the billions, and we're quite a ways behind. But nevertheless, your point is well taken, and that is the argument you make. And for me, I always say that's all well and good, but in our country, because the states are individually responsible for education, my state has 10 million people in it. That's a small enough group to start doing things. Some of our states are the size of Iceland. So we do have the opportunity to really create any kind of system we want. And I think that's the thing that I hope comes out of to me, the main thing I don't want to lose out of this period, because we've got the foundation shaking a little bit. We've got this opening right now where we really can discuss, what's next. I really hope the one thing that we keep in mind is that we can completely transform our relationship to our children and to our families and to education. And that's even if we don't come up with an exact solution right now, creating kind of radicals of us all, I think, is hopefully one of the benefits of this.
I'm looking forward to it not being radical anymore.
Well, exactly.
You know, everybody keeps on talking about the new normal.
Right.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm living the new normal, and the children that surround us are living the new normal, and the communities that we're serving and working with and living with are the new normal. The thing that gets in the way is not those people. I'm afraid it's, as you said earlier, to take it back on one of the things you said, the rich and powerful want to remain rich and powerful. Yeah. You know, the king wants to keep his crown.
And and that's always going to be the case. That's no matter what happens, the people who are benefiting are going to fight the change. And right now, though, I mean, worldwide, we have, I mean, especially in the U.S., I think the UK is this way too. Is that that the difference between the wealthy and the poor has never been more extreme than it is right now in our country. And that distance is sort of having people really reevaluate what we're doing right now. And that's one of the reasons, and I don't know if we want to talk about this at all. And so Matt can cut this out if he doesn't think this fits here. But that's one of the reasons that I'm working with Sally Hoy to put together this Play First Summit conference to bring together a lot of people because right now, we have 20 of people I just respect everything out of all of these people from all over the world, from 6 different continents, from a dozen countries coming together to talk about what can we do now? What is next? What has our experience been? And what are our hopes going forward? And then what can we do to make sure the world is we come out of this with a better world especially for children and their families and their educators, the people working with them.
I think one of the things, I mean, one of the well-known scripts that we have is that the play is descriptive rather than prescriptive, and that's the biggest problem with education. It's prescriptive rather than descriptive. And I'm hoping the conversations that we're starting to have, not only here and not only there, but also with IPI and International Play Iceland and with other things that we're doing, that those conversations can start to. And when you and I first met, and I was. Can I just go back on that story? Because
Please do.
Hulda and I talked about International Play Iceland for about 6 or 9 months, and we knew that it couldn't happen, and certainly didn't happen the way we wanted to, unless people of some strength and standing were to join in. Because here was Hulda, who from a young girl from Iceland, and me, a young guy, and now older guy from the UK. We'd never been involved in this kind of thing before, and we just said, okay, well, who are the main influencers? Who are the people that we think we really need to have here? And Hulda was saying, well, trouble is they'll require loads of money, and that's what they're there for. And I said, well, let's reach out and see. And one of the people that we were really keen to have was Janet. No, it was not Janet Lansbury, although we were working to have it. Was you, Tom? You were already head and shoulders above the crowd. You'd seen the parapet wall, and you were peering well over the top. And so we were both amazed, amused, and delighted when you agreed to join International Play Iceland. And it's about, and what you're doing now is about joining those bubbles together, those dots together, to create something that's much, much bigger, because it's out there. The quality is out there. Unfortunately, the poo's out there as well. I would say Matthew will probably take that one out as well.
Yeah, well, he will. Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely. The editor. The trouble is that there is still that element of poorness about the sector that almost overshadows the really good stuff that's going on. And we've got to just turn that on its head and make sure that the good stuff actually does start to stand up and be counted a bit. I'm not interested in small organizations or even medium-sized organizations that believe that they've got the solution, the panacea to all of our problems. If you join their organization, if you do, they have their leaders, some of whom I again, like you, I've got accolades for, some not so. I'm old enough now not to really care what they think about me. But it's, if the good people in this world that are creating real opportunities for children, and we've seen a lot of them in Play Iceland, we've seen a lot of them when we were in Seattle, God rest her, the wonderful lady across the water from you, who sadly passed shortly after her attending.
Yeah, Erin Kinney.
Erin, indeed. You know, and Halter herself, you know, 32-year-old, died overnight. You know, there are lots of people around still who are making their marks. Some of them, frankly, don't have the confidence to stand up and talk. Doing well, but we need to not only become their voice, but articulate their voices as well. And I think that's what things like you're doing with the fairy dust people and International Play Ice is beginning to do.
Well, that, you know, and that's the hope, is to have all of these sort of cross, I mean, they all have value, but it is like, I think that metaphor, you know, that we were talking about, those bubbles, we all live in our bubbles. And if we can get those bubbles, because that's what bubbles do, is they come together and then they become a bigger bubble. And hopefully we can, you know, encapsulate the whole world. Of course, the problem with bubbles is they pop. So we have to keep applying air to them to keep them going. Yeah. And so that's why we need to keep getting together, to keep talking. I think one of the things that I'm hoping that we can do to create more momentum is take advantage of all these parents who've kind of become self-educated on play-based education in these last many months, because some of them are ready to step forward and say, you know what, I don't like what my kids got to go back to. I think it should change. And I believe that if educators and parents are united, there's not a force on earth that can stop us.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, there may be lots of us around, but you're right. The real force is the parental force, particularly if they don't need to go to school. And a lot of my neighbours and friends and the people around me who've had their children at home for 12 weeks are saying, you know, they've got so much more out of this free creativity. And okay, we've done some lessons with them as well. Some of them have been forced upon them. Some have been derived for themselves. But they've got much more out of the social interaction with their parents, the understanding of what's going on, you know, all the freedoms that they've had, you know, and had to have during this time has made a marked difference, and it's capitalizing on that difference that we've got to spend our time doing.
Well, I've been saying for some of the preschool age kids, the 2 to 5 year olds, these have been the best months of their lives. Yeah. This is not a tragic time for them at all. And, you know, and then we think about, of course, you know, I imagine right now somebody's listening to us talking and they're saying, well, yeah, but some people have to go to work. Some people need the childcare. They need the school. They need the place for their child to go. And that's true, right? We need that opportunity. But there's one of our speakers at our conference is a man named Chris Bennett, and he has an organization called Wonder Schools. And they're a for-profit company. But one of the things he's been talking about, he's been saying so many businesses have always thought about childcare as being the parents' problem. And he says, no, we need to make sure that businesses understand that this is their issue. And having childcare is on the premises, having childcare be part of what the workday is like, bringing the children closer. And so the parents, and Jennifer and I have been talking a lot about this, is wouldn't it be great if actually the parents were coming to work with their children and had their children and were working actually in the classroom part of the day, spending a couple hours a day in that classroom. It would make them better people. And I suspect it would make them better employees, because you and I know anybody who works with young children, it makes us more creative. And that's one of the things that every business is looking for, is creative employees and refreshed employees. And if you have parents who aren't feeling guilty about not being with their children all day long and constantly have to leave because their child's sick, or, you know, to take care of child, you know, issues with their child, but rather have the child right there with them. And it sounds bizarre, really a new thing that we've broken up the kids and sent them away from the workplace.
Well, my original nurseries back in the day were all based on business parks.
Okay.
What we had over here in the 90s was suddenly there were these sort of 500,000 square foot. I know that's not a lot in America, but it was over here. 500,000 square foot of office space with 10,000 people in it, sitting in an island in the middle of nowhere, countryside. And suddenly you had 10,000 people who didn't know what to do with their home lives. So we started to create nurseries, and the parents would come in, particularly the women, and breastfeed and spend a bit of time there, and it emerged. Unfortunately, then what took over was this notion that you had to do that for not only for profit, but for huge amounts of profit.
Yeah,
I've always maintained, and I hope the guy that you're talking about maintains the same, that
Yeah.
we talk about the children first.
Yep.
We talk the staff who are supporting them and enabling them, whether they're parents or whether they're paid employees. We treat them as very close second. We treat parents as a very close third. And the fourth one is your return on investment. And the investment is not only about, the return is not only about money, it's also about the satisfaction and the understanding that what you're doing is creating a better society. That's what we really ought to be doing. Yeah. So I don't mind people earning money. I really don't. I've seen too many not-for-profits.
The money part, is sort of secondary. One of the things that I just wanted to share with you is Jennifer and I, my wife and I, we took our dog up to the local dog off-leash area for the dogs. And that's where a lot of young Amazon people come in because they let dogs come to their workplace already. So why not kids, right? They've got the dogs there anyway. And so there's always a bunch of young single people up there with their dogs. And so one day we were sharing this with a couple of the guys. We were saying, here's our idea. Wouldn't it be great if we could put preschools in Amazon and places where parents can go spend part of their days with their kids and they don't have to blah, blah, blah. And we were telling this, and the guys, these are single guys without kids. And they were like, I would love that. I would want my shift in there too. I would want my opportunity to spend time with children. And again, it's not considered a hassle or a headache. And I think right now we think of children. So many parents have to think of their children as a headache or a problem rather than as, the center of their lives.
Well, we've had now since the 70s, when you were still young.
Oh yeah.
We've had a growing sense, a growing society that says the important thing to do is to earn money. It's to be rich and to be in fact what's happening, we're in danger of it becoming a political conversation rather than a play one. But what in fact happened was that society began to change and say that this is far more important to us than anything around us. So earning money is the focus. So if in fact your children became luxury items rather than essential ingredients, and that's really damaged us. And I'm hopeful, and it's going to, again, will probably upset a few people. I'm hoping that this strange pandemic that's around the world at the moment changes that slightly and says, fine, okay, get your priorities right. If we want a society where children don't wander around with knives, where people do see, like Jane Elliott saw them all those years ago, as black people or white people or rich people or poor people or disabled people or able-bodied people. Let's forget all that, because what we're really about is creating a society where everybody matters. I know I share the view, and I make it absolutely clear, Black Lives Matter more at the moment, because the equity that's around, the equality that's around, just has always stuck in my lifetime. And it may get better one day. I hope it does. But it will only happen if we, in fact, create environments where those children, our children, all of our children, can actually work together in harmony and say, fine, that's a rejection, a thing of the past. That's not something that we want to be involved in, and with equity comes the ability for us all to be proud, everybody to be proud of what they do, what they achieve, how they share, and that's what I think. I'm hoping that this epidemic has started to make us think, and it will stop, or it's beginning to stop, the notion that the very rich people give middle class people, dare I say, like you and me, enough money for us to justifiably say, well, yeah, okay, well, yes, we do care about people, but
well, again, they can say they're going to say whatever they want, and they'll go for some superficial change to shut people up. But to them, anything that upsets the apple cart, it threatens their status as the rich and powerful. And just to go back, anybody listening right now, it's just, I can't tell the difference between what I do as an educator and politics. It all goes together. It's all so interrelated, what we're doing. And I think we should maybe a whole discussion on Black Lives Matter might be the next topic when we sit down and talk again, Tom, because there's a lot going on. As you know, there's a lot going on in my country right now, and there's a lot of us who are having our minds opened to things. that anyway, so let's save that for another topic. That one, that's too big for us right now. And we're a couple of white guys. We might not be the right ones to talk about it.
I hope that what we've done today is the beginning, as with all of the things that we do, the beginnings of conversation. We may well have other people that would want to have a conversation like this with us, or would like to listen to us, or would like to turn us off. Any one of those three is an acceptable one. Part of the reason we met was Hulda, bless her, and the growth that's happened is enormous compared to where we were those 6-7 years ago. What has happened subsequently is that we've grown in both knowledge and awareness. And one of the things that I'm privileged to do is to say that A, you're my friend, and B, that we have had the opportunity of sharing stuff across the water. And one of the things that we want to share more and more of is the infamous Teacher Tom books. And this isn't a plug for the books. No, he's not going to hold it up. He's not going to hold it up. I won't let him hold it. He will hold it up. His first book did sell a few over here, and we all missed a huge opportunity to. And there's the first one as well. I'm determined this time that enough people read it, and we've started to get quite a few people who've written to us and bought books from us already. I'm hoping a lot more will. And one of the things, you've suffered, not you've suffered, the person, poor people listening to this suffered for the last 20 minutes, half an hour, although Matt will probably tell us more like an hour, is that for the next 24 hours after you've switched off, if you've been clever enough to wait until the end, we're going to be offering you a 10% discount on buying either or both of the books. Tom doesn't know that, and he's not going to tell me off too much, because I think it is a series of things to read, to understand, and there's not enough good stuff around that's been written. Some of the older stuff is stunning still, and is still very, very relevant. But this is modern relevance that we're talking about, and that's what we really want to motor on, is the modern relevance that technology like this will allow us to do. But the written form is something that you can go back to again and again and again. And he's talking about the third book already, I'm pleased to say, and this will be Teacher Tom Takes Over the World. Another segue. One of my old friends was a writer called Tom Sharp. I don't know if you know Tom Sharp.
I know the name. I don't know his work.
Oh, you don't know his work? Okay, he was South African. He came across in the Troubles. He was anti apartheid, and he got kicked out of South Africa. And he lived in Cambridge, and he wrote a series of books. And you must read at least one of them because they're very, very funny. He's a comical writer, and his first book was called Righteous Assembly. But the original title of it, the character in there, and I'm not going to tell you too much about him, was a South African policeman called Sergeant Else, E-L-S-E. And tried to convince the publisher, which was Secker and Warburg, that he ought to call the book Else. And the only reason he wanted it called that, is so the second book would be called Something Else. And a bit like Teacher Tom book 1, book 2, and not surprised
Teacher Tom's first book, Teacher Tom's second book. Yeah, I have a naming convention.
Tom, it's been good. It's been good. It's nice to have a talk with you rather than us sitting on opposite sides of a table, or sitting in conferences, or sitting in amongst 40 people who want to trap your time.
Tom, this is, for me, this is incredible for me too. And likewise, your friendship and our partnership and is just really valuable to me and important. And so I really appreciate this, and I can't wait to do another one. 2 Toms Talking.
Indeed. But for now, let's leave it on the crescendo of a 10% discount, and a fond farewell and a big kiss from me.
Bye, Tom. Thanks.
Yeah.